Oh, sorry, didn't see you there. Congratulations. If you're watching this video, that means you made it. You are the President of the United States. That's quite the feat, kid. Now it's time to put down the celebratory cake and start focusing on running the country. My job, as Chief Political Instructor, is to focus on getting you up to task in Presidency 101 with all the how-to videos that you need. Today, we're going to focus on Supreme Court nominations. So buckle up and get ready. We're going to go through this pretty fast. Follow me.
Probably. Yeah. Oh, Donnie? What's that thing on your chest?
Oh, you mean Jeff?
Yeah.
He's being our president today. We don't have the president ready yet, so he's kind of just filling in for the video for us. But by the way, Mr. President, this is the White House Judicial Selection Committee. They're tasked with basically helping you pick your nominees and choose who's the best fit for what you need in a Supreme Court nominee.
Why, hello there, Judicial Selection Committee. Do you have any good candidates for me today?
Why, of course, Mr. President, here you are. Do you have any questions about our nominees?
Yes, I do. I'm very curious about
This is where you should start taking notes, Mr. President.
how you select nominees for the Supreme Court.
What we look for in a nominee is a combination of good ideology, symbolism, and character to best represent the public. This does not mean that all these criteria have to be met or weighed the same when choosing a nominee. It all depends on the president's preferences.
That's right. For instance, when it comes to ideology of the nominee, certain presidents, like Reagan and Nixon, have put more emphasis on ideology.
Precisely. In fact, as O'Brien points out, Reagan put so much emphasis on ideology that he created us. It is important that we do so because, as Baum pointed out, the ideology of nominees can change the direction of the court. We interview nominees to see their ideology so we can best guess their views.
We also look at past opinions of nominees if they have written them. This makes appellate court justices great nominees.
We all do this because, as O'Brien points out, ideology is the best guide to their policy agenda on the court.
Hey, we can't forget about character, ladies. Now, you remember John Paul Stevens. He used to cite many times throughout his opinions on past experiences he had, for instance, like with his father during Prohibition days, in his opinions. So it matters a lot what the justices have when it comes to their values and their past experiences. And we also want to make sure they don't have any skeletons in their closets. We don't want another Clarence Thomas in a Need Hill situation. Am I right?
Right, character is also very important. And this is important to the nominee because, as Gibson and Caldera have taught us, it is important to ensure that the nominee will act in a fair way. This is important because nominees that do not have good character may struggle to get through the nomination process, as Maltese points out. The Senate looks for good character and judicial temperament. And if a nominee has skeletons in the closet, they may not make it through the nomination process and be a good justice.
So what about symbolism?
I almost forgot, symbolism is important because when we want to place nominees onto the court that best represent the makeup of the public, symbolism has become important in recent decades. That is why we have seen more diversity in the court in the past years, like when Obama put Sotomayor, the first Latino, on the court.
Thomas points out that symbolism can be represented in many different ways. This can include race, religion, sex, and even geography.
Historically, we have seen certain pieces of symbolism throughout time. For instance, after the New Deal, when a Jewish or Catholic spot was available, according to Thomas Marshall.
Overall, symbolism can not only have a major impact on the court, but Baum points out it can be easier to get symbolic nominees, like the first woman justice, through the Senate, and also have good political gains.
This is one big disclaimer. Do not use political patronage when deciding your nominee, Mr. President. Baum points out that political patronage has been used in the past, and it is simply immoral and very unfair way to choose a nominee who will stand for the rights of all U.S. citizens.
All right, Mr. President. Before you choose your nominee, I want to mention the influences that interest groups can have on the process. O'Brien shows us that interest groups have a major impact on the nomination. They submit information for the Judicial Selection Committee, testify in hearings, use the media influence in the process, and more. For instance, in Reagan's attempts to put Bork through the court, the NAACP, the ACLU, and women rights groups actively campaigned against him and helped make his nomination a failure. Got it, Jeff?
Got it.
All right, Mr. President. It's time for you to choose your Supreme Court nominee. Now remember everything that you learned from the White House Judicial Selection Committee, the senators, as well as the interest groups. Please don't screw this up. Alright, Mr. President, here's your nominees. Nominee 1. Nominee 1 has a consistent ideology, but she has a lot of skeletons in her closet. Nominee 2. Nominee 2 has a consistent ideology and doesn't really have too many cons. Nominee 3 has a clean background, but has very extreme ideology. And for some reason, not every nominee makes too much sense. Nominee 4 is just a taco. Intern, focus. You're supposed to be picking a nominee. Focus. 1, 2, or 3. Pick one. Nominee 2 it is. Now we're heading over to Congress. The reason we're heading over to Congress is to check out and see what their opinions are going to be on the nominees. It's very important for the nomination process. Well, hi there, senators. It's rare to see you two in the same room, let alone talking nowadays, isn't it?
What is your intern Johnny doing with president on his jacket?
Never mind about that. We're here to talk about Supreme Court nominations.
What about it?
What should the president look for in a nominee to ease the confirmation process in the Senate?
Well, one thing we look for in the Senate is for the makeup of ideology of the nominee. Siegel mentions that if the majority of the Senate and the president have different ideological views, there will be a lot of opposition in the nominee based off of ideology. The Senate also likes to have the nominee have the same ideology as them.
That's right, Reed. And also, it's not only a partisan battle in the Senate over the ideology, but also between the Senate and the president. The Senate is more likely to confirm a nominee who is more sympathetic to the Senate. If the nominee is really close to the president or is opposed by senators of their state, they are less likely to get through. Past senators, or those who do get through, with support of the power of the legislative, will be more likely to get through because there's a better chance they will advance the power of the Senate. A nominee with radical ideology will receive more of a battle, while one with more moderate views won't have as much fuss about them. We don't want another Bork, am I right?
Of course.
As Mom points out, the Senate heavily looks at the history of the nominee, integrity, professional competence, review of their writings, and past performance. Askew shows us that the ABA looks at all these, as well as provides us with a rating of the nominee. For instance, Kagan received a well-qualifying rating.
Just a warning, Mr. President, you might want to make sure that you do not have a controversial legislation on the floor or policies in place, because if you do, someone might hold your nominees hostage until you change the policy.
I do not.
Tell that to the New York Times' Loretta Lynch and the human trafficking bill.
Congratulations. You picked the right nominee and he's on his way to the Supreme Court.
I feel like a parent at graduation.
Thank you for nominating me. When I'm on the Supreme Court, I'll think of you, or I might think of you, when I'm striking down your legislation. Then again, I might not. You know how virus beware is.
What's he talking about?
Oh, it's buyer's beware. It's basically scholars have pointed out that in the buyer's beware article that once the nominee gets on the court, he tends to stray away from what the president wants. But that's for another training video another time.
What?
No worries. Just go ahead and try it. See if it'll work for you. It appears to be locked. The Senate must still be holding up your confirmation hearing. Don't worry, there's a couple ways we can fix this. This is the final thing you need to know about the confirmation process. The president can't help a nominee through the Senate, but it takes going to the public. Now there's two different ways you can do this. Option one, you can say the nominee's not worth them, drop them like a sack of potatoes and we can do it.
Excuse me?
There's another option. Option number two is the president can go directly to the public. Doing this costs a lot of political capital, and sometimes presidents don't like to do it, but a president can go to the public, announce his favoritism towards the candidate, and normally he can get through. George H.W. Bush did this very effectively with Clarence Thomas. Let's try it again. There you go. That worked. Congratulations.